This is Secret Life of Symbols.
On this episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about the sun and its symbolic importance in the whole story of the Zodiac. Now, as we begin the story of the sun and the ancient religions of the world and how much the sun has dominated civilization for as long as we have records, we need to go back to the very beginning, and that's a long time ago. Let's go back to Egypt. We'll start in Egypt because that's one of the oldest civilizations on the earth. And we will see how Egypt developed the concept of the importance of the sun in relation to theology and spirituality and religion. Now, this is an ancient symbol for the sun, prehistoric, that the ancient peoples drew to represent the sun. It's an equal arm cross within the circle. Here is an artifact that was found in England at Stonehenge. It's on a golden circle, which represents the sun, and then you'll see the cross in between, and this is about 4,500 years old. Almost 5,000 years ago, ancient mankind drew pictures of what they perceived the sun to be as an equal arm cross, and you will see it also in the ancient religions of the Near and Middle East. The different ancient gods in the Phoenician, Canaanite, Sumerian systems, they all had the equal arm cross. But it's important to remember that the sun was never perceived as a god. It was perceived to represent the spiritual qualities of God, in that it brought life to the earth, it brought warmth to the earth, it brought energy for us to live. So all of the good things about God and his creation was best represented by the symbol of the sun. Sometimes the sun actually even looks like it has an equal arm cross in the heavens. You will find the equal arm cross all over the world. Every race and creed and color has the same symbol for the ancient sun. The Nordics had the symbol, the Vikings kept the symbol, ancient France used the symbol. The symbol was on rocks and carvings and paintings. Even in India, you have the equal arm cross. The Celtic and the Celtic Druids in Europe and England and Ireland had an equal arm cross. Native Americans used it, Central America, and especially in Mayan and Inca and some of the ancient religions in South America have used the equal arm cross. So it became known all around the world that the equal arm cross within a circle represented the old 5,000-year-old petroglyph concept of the sun. Today, people see it everywhere, and so it has become not really important because it's just a general symbol that people realize is a cross. Here is a picture of the ancient Nordic peoples that were preparing for what we would call today the Easter sunrise service. The circle on the cross is not a man dying on a cross, it's the sun on the north, east, west, and southern parts of the earth. That's the whole story in itself, is the vision of the sun going southward and dying on the cross and then being reborn on December 25th when it moves 1 degree northward and now is coming back and sort of springing back to life. And so in the spring, we call it springing back to life. But here are Christians gathering to worship Jesus, never realizing that they are actually meeting around a very ancient symbol of the old petroglyph cross. That this symbol of an equal arm cross within the circle represents an old ancient idea of how to picture the sun. And it's really extraordinary to notice that all churches use that same symbol. And all over the world, people do not realize that this cross that they think represents Christianity is actually over 5,000 years old. It's an ancient, prehistoric symbol of the sun. Jesus has always represented the sun, the S-U-N, not S-O-N. The etymology of the word for the sun. You see that sun can be S-U-N or S-O-N, and depending on how it's used. S-O-N and S-U-N are used interchangeably in Christianity. Today we still have Jesus as God's Son in the heavens, and he became now a great sun god. But the question you need to ask yourself is, who owns the sun? We assume that the sun must be owned by someone. Well, mankind doesn't own the sun. If anything, you would say maybe God owns the sun. So if God owns the sun, then it's God's son, and he's the light of the world. Of course the sun is the light of the world. As in the southern constellations, when you go down south, when the sun reaches the lowest part in the sky in southern hemisphere, there is a constellation of stars that look just exactly like a cross. And so we say the sun, when it dies in December, it goes down and dies on the cross. The cross is called the Southern Cross. When he was dead, but now he's coming back to the northern hemisphere because he promised he would return. And he is returning again in the spring. Solar symbolism of the sun going southward each day until it finally reaches December 22nd, when it's its lowest point in the southern sky. It's down south now. It's gone south. But on December 22nd, the sun goes as far in the south as it's going to go, and it stops going southward on December 22nd. It doesn't go any further southward. Then on the 23rd and 24th, it rises on the same degree. And therefore, for 3 days, it doesn't move at all, stays in that same degree. So we say, and the ancient people said, that Jesus, or God's Son, died for 3 days. Why? Because it was moving every day, and now it's not moving for 3 days. So for 3 days, the sun was dead, and on December 25th, the sun moves 1 degree northward, which indicates, even the United States Navy will show you on their instruments, that it indicates the sun is now alive again. He's born again. Now he's going to work his way back to the northern hemisphere, because he said, God's Son said, I will return. Well, he does. He returns every year. So what do you see? Do you see a man on this cross? Do you see a man dying on the cross? No. This is what is actually meant by dying on the cross. It's the sun. During the summer, when the sun is in the northern hemisphere, it is in the constellation of Leo, so he is the lion of the tribe of Judah. And then when he dies in Capricorn, down south when he goes south. And so now he dies in the winter. And then he comes back and springs back to life. And when he comes back to the northern hemisphere, we call it spring. But when it crosses the equator, the sun will have to cross the equator, coming back to us in the north. When it crosses the equator, it is said to have passed over the equator. So in the Hebrew religion, when the sun passes over coming back to the northern hemisphere, they call that celebration the Passover. But for Christians, they're worshiping the sun also as it passes over, but they refer to it as the resurrection. God's Son has been resurrected. He's come back. Here we have 37 of what we call sons of God from the ancient world to the modern. And they all have the same identity and the same stories that go with their lives. They were born of a virgin, they died on a cross, they were dead for 3 days and then was resurrected and came back. Their father was a carpenter, and they had 12, almost all of these had 12 followers or 12 apostles. They had the same story that we have in Christianity 37 times over. So it's a continuation of the same story coming out of the ancient world, and today we call it Catholicism or Christianity. The reason why these themes keep repeating themselves is because it is what is called the greatest story ever told. I think it is the greatest story ever told, that the sun is born each morning and ultimately dies at night, and then emerges the next morning and brings life back again, but then dies again. And so the whole story is on the subjects of the whole universe and how our skies work and how the planets work. I think that the idea that there are 37 major gods, sun gods, and each have the same kind of a story, where they died and were resurrected, and they had a virgin birth, it seems to imply that there was some sort of an ancient, really, truly ancient culture that developed this idea and this story for the world, and therefore it has become known as the greatest story ever told, because it is in fact the greatest story ever told.